Okay, today's lesson is a review on area and probability. So we're going to start by reviewing area. We already know that the formula for the area of a rectangle or a square is base times height. The formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So we're going to start by finding the area of this rectangle right here. So each of these cubes represents 1 centimeter squared. So to find the area of this rectangle, I look at the height first, and I know that the height is 4 centimeters, or 4 cubes, and the width is 5. To find the area, I just multiply those two numbers. 4 times 5 is 20, so I know the area of this rectangle is 20 centimeters cubed. Let's go ahead and find the area of this rectangle below it. I count the cubes that represent the height or the length, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cubes. So I write 11 here, and then I count how wide it is, or the base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I multiply those two numbers. I know that 11 times 5 is 55, so the area of this rectangle is 55 centimeters squared. All right, let's move on to this triangle. The area, or the formula for area of a triangle is a little bit different because you're going to divide your answer by 2. So I'm still going to multiply my base times my height and then divide that answer by 2. So my base here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And my height, I count for my tallest point of the triangle. So instead of going out here to the side, I'm going to start in the middle and go straight up to that point. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes high. And then I multiply those two numbers. 7 times 4 is 28. And then I take that answer and I divide it by 2. 28 divided by 2 is 14. So I know the area of this triangle is 14 centimeters cubed. Okay, let's finish up by finding the area of this square. The square is 4 cubes high and 4 cubes wide. To find the area of the square, I just multiply my base times height, or my length times width, same thing. And 4 times 4 is 16, so I know the answer to this is 16 centimeters cubed. Okay, so I was having a little trouble making my spinners using WizTeach, so I'm just going to draw the spinner for you real quick. The question is, for this spinner, about what fraction of the spins would you expect to land on pink, and what about green? So we need to find the fraction of spins that land on pink and green. All right, so here's my spinner. And let's say this is red, this is green, pink, and blue. You can see here that I've originally divided my spinner into thirds. So this represents 1/3, green represents 1/3, and red represents 1/3. So the first question is, what fraction of the spins would you expect to land on pink? So this third over here, represented by pink and blue, is divided in half. So if I were to divide my entire circle into sections this big, I would have 6 sections. So I know that 1/6 of the spinner is pink. What fraction of the spinner does green represent? So green takes up this whole space down here. That's 2/6 or 1/3. Those are equivalent fractions. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this problem is about using dice. The question is, if you throw a six-sided die 84 times, about how many times would you expect 4 to come up? So here I have my six-sided die, and 4 represents 1 out of 6 numbers. There are 6 numbers on this die, and 4 is 1 out of those 6 numbers. So I know that 4 represents 1/6 of my whole. If I want to figure out how many times 4 would come up, then I would take 1/6 of 84. So 84 is my whole, that's what we're working with, and we need to figure out what is 1/6 of 84, because 4 is 1 out of 6 numbers on the die. So I would take 84, take my whole, and I divide it by my denominator. I know that 6 will go into 8 one time. 6 times 1 is 6, so I write that below and subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. 6 won't go into 2, but I still have another digit up here, so my next step is to bring down the 4, and I know that 6 will go into 24 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. I can write that below if I want, but I don't have to because I know I won't have a remainder, and my answer is 14. So I know that 1/6 of 84 is 14. My question was about how many times would you expect 4 to come up, and the answer is 14 times. Alright, the next question, we're going to use a grid. This question says, if you tossed a coin on the grid below, what fraction of the tosses would you expect to land on S? There are a few ways that we can solve this problem. First, we need to figure out, well, what is our whole? The whole would be the number of squares on the grid. So you can see here that we have 9 squares on the grid. Then we ask ourselves, well, how many of the 9 squares are an S? And there are 3 S's on our grid, so that would be 3 nines. 3 out of 9 letters on our grid are S's. Another way that we can do this is that we can reduce our fraction. We can find an equivalent fraction for 3 nines. There are 3 letters on the grid, 3 different letters, S, R, and Q. S represents 1 out of 3 letters, or 3 options. So there are 2 correct answers here, 3 ninths or 1/3. They're equivalent fractions. Okay, let's go ahead and do another dice problem. This question says, if you throw a 6-sided die 96 times, how many times would you expect it to land on an odd number less than 5? So since this has a few steps, a few pieces of information that we need to know, I'm going to underline the important information in this problem. We know that we have a 6-sided die. We're going to roll it 96 times, and it has to be an odd number less than 5. All right. Odd number less than 5. So I'm looking at my 6-sided die, and there are only 2 odd numbers that are less than 5 on my 6-sided die, 1 and 3. Those are the only odd numbers that are less than 5. So I know that that represents 2 6. 2 out of 6 numbers on the dice are odd numbers that are less than 5. 1 and 3. So that's 2/6 of my whole. I can also reduce this fraction if I want to 1/3. Alright. Then it asks me, if you throw a 6-sided die 96 times, how many times would you expect it to land on these numbers? So now that I have my fraction, 2 sixths, I need to figure out what 2 sixths of 96 is. Let me move this. What is 2 sixths of 96? And we learned in class that to solve these fraction of problems, there are 2 steps. The first step is to take your whole and divide it by the denominator. So we're going to take 96 divided by 6. 6 will go into 9 one time. 6 times 1 is 6. So I write it below and subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3. 6 won't go into 3, so I bring down my next digit, which is a 6. 6 will go into 36. 6 times 6 times 6 is 36. I don't have a remainder, so I know that this is my final answer. Step 2 of solving fraction of problems is to take your answer from the division problem and multiply it by your numerator. Most of the time, most of the problems we've worked with so far, the numerator has been 1, so that's been easy to do. This time it's 2, so we're going to multiply 16 times 2. Some of you might be able to do that in your head, but if you can't, you can always set up your multiplication problem like we've done in class. 6 times 2 is 12, so I put a 2 here and carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So I know that 2 sixths of 96 is 32. It would land on an odd number less than 5 32 times. All right, let's move on to your practice problems for tonight. Okay, your practice problem tonight involves finding the probability of landing on certain colors on a spinner. So let's say if you spin the spinner below 800 times, let me draw the spinner for you. Here we have our spinner, and let's divide that spinner, let's see, this, red, blue, we'll do white, and let's see, black. Okay. All right. If you spin the spinner below 800 times, how many times would you expect it to land on each color? So I'm going to help you with the first part. We're going to find the fraction that each color represents, and then all you have to do is figure out how many times out of 800 it would land on each of these colors. So if you look at our spinner, red represents 1/4 of the circle. Blue represents 1/4 of the circle. Then we look at the bottom half of our circle. The bottom half of our circle is divided into 4 parts here. And if we divided the entire circle into these same equal parts, it would be divided into 8 parts. So I know that black represents 1/8, white represents 1/8 each time. Okay? If I put all of these together, these 3 whites, I would have 3/8. So you can solve it whichever way you choose. All right, good luck.